Welcome to the PowerPoint on HVACR terminology. Some of this you might already know. If you don't, that's not a problem. That's what this PowerPoint is for. Accumulator. Accumulator is an item that prevents liquid refrigerant from flooding back into the compressor. Normally used on a heat pump system. There's other applications for this, but in residential air conditioning and heating, it's going to be primarily in a heat pump. Belt-driven. Most belt-driven motors nowadays in HVAC is in commercial units. The picture shows a standard blower assembly with a belt-driven motor that you'll see in a unit, usually a rooftop unit. You'll get a chance to see this belt-driven motor on one of our units on the roof at school at your commercial air conditioning class. Bimetal coils. A bimetal coil is made up of two different metals put together. And what happens is when you put heat to them, this coil that's coiled up in this thermostat will straighten out with enough heat. When the heat is taken away from it, then it will coil back up into a circle. And these are used when the temperature changes just slightly 1 or 2 degrees. It turns enough to turn on and shut off your air conditioning and heating system. Biocide tablets. These are tablets that you usually put in something that's holding water to keep bacteria from forming. You don't want to put this in a glass you're going to drink out of, but in the pans of air conditioning systems or swamp coolers or humidifiers or something like that, there's standing water. This keeps bacteria from growing. Brazing is a metal joining process where 2 or more metals are joined together to become one. You'll get quite a bit of time in the months to come doing this in our lab. British thermal units. The amount of heat needed to raise 1 pound of water, 1 degree Fahrenheit. Bubble solution. This is your best friend when you're looking for a leak on an air conditioning or heating system. When you're looking for any type of air leak, this is great. Now, Big Blue here cost you about $10 a bottle, but for a 99-cent bottle at Walmart, and there's a recipe I put on here: 6 cups of water, 1 cup of dish soap, and a 1/4 cup of corn syrup. Well, where you say, why do I need corn syrup in this? Well, the corn syrup makes it more sticky, kind of holds on to the gap and will make better bubbles for you. But there was days I went through a whole bottle of this, spraying every fitting I could find when there was a leak. So it's something that will be your best friend in the future. Burnout. Compressor burnout is a failure of electricity inside a compressor, which will cause acid to build up, and you can see what the inside of a compressor looks like. When you have a compressor burnout and you lose the compressor, you can't just remove the compressor and put a new one in. The inside of the system needs to be cleaned out. Capacitor. Capacitor is something that helps assist the start of a motor, like a compressor or a fan motor. They're used in all kinds of motors. Everything you probably have in your house has some bit of capacitor in them. Now, I'll let you know now that's a little confusing. That's all with single-phase motors. 3-phase motors do not use capacitors because there's 3 actual phases. It starts easy without a capacitor. Capillary tubes. This is one type of a metering device, the other two being the more common, the TXV, which is a thermal expansion valve, and the piston or the fixed orifice metering device. These are little tubes, very small, that actually just take a little bit of Freon to a pipe, which will cause it to expand just like the other items do. But you'll see some capillary tubes in the future. They're not used as much in the industry, mainly in the way of a metering device. It's the TXV. CFM. CFM is short for cubic feet per minute. It's a measurement of velocity which air flows into or out of a space. Here's the little formula at the side to figure out how much CFM you will need for a room. Chiller. A chiller is a machine that removes heat from liquid vapor, vapor compression, or absorption refrigeration cycle. These are big air conditioning or refrigeration systems on large corporations, buildings. Every large skyscraper you see probably has chillers on it. They don't use normal, what we think of as air conditioning. Condensate pump. You'll see these in the HVAC system when the air conditioner, for example, is in a basement and the water has to be pumped that condensates in the air conditioning system from normal use. It has to be pumped uphill and out of the building. Or when there's not a direct line for, say, an air handler that's in a closet in the home and there's no direct wall that you can take the draining from the condensate out of the home, so it has to be pumped up and out of the home. The contactor's electrical component in air conditioning that controls the floor electricity. It tells it when to come on, when it comes off, and you'll learn more about this in another class. I just want you to get familiar with the part and the terminology too. Continuity. As one of the things you'll get in the class is you get a ohm meter, and all most things you'll use it for, not all the things you use it for, is testing if there's a break in something like a fuse. If you don't know if the fuse is bad, if you can't see through, it's not a glass fuse, you have to put continuity on both ends of it to see or run through it, and it'll tell you whether or not that unit fuse is working or if a wire is not working and why the unit's not working. But it's a simple test, and you'll get shown how to do that as well. Crankcase heaters. Here's two crankcase heaters. There's a little looks like a roll of pennies that goes into the bottom of a compressor that has a designated sealed pipe that it goes into, and the other one's at what's called a belly band on the right hand side. It wraps around the bottom of the compressor, and what this does in cold climates where the air conditioning needs to turn on, it keeps it warmer, so then the oil will flow better when at first startup. If you start up the compressor without any oil in it and it's not flowing around nicely, you'll end up causing the compressor to wear. So this just keeps the compressor warm in very cold climates. Defrost timer. This is something that's built into mostly heat pumps when we talk about air conditioning. So when it's in heating cycle, the outside coil can freeze up. This is something that turns it off and reverses direction of the refrigerant to heat up the outside coil to melt off ice. But this is something you'll be real familiar with soon. Dirty sock syndrome. Dirty sock syndrome is just what it says. It's something that smells like dirty socks, and it's bacteria that builds up between the fine little gaps and the fins of the inside coil, and the bacteria builds up, and it's almost the worst thing you want to have to deal with in a home, because getting it out is not easy. Sometimes you can spray stuff on it and it's not really bad and you can get it out, but sometimes it's so bad that the coil has to be taken out and soaked in a chemical to get it all out. But it's curable. It just sometimes is kind of expensive to do. Dry bulb is the temperature of the air measured that we normally see when we go to a thermometer and we look at it as it is in the picture. That's the temperature. Wet bulb is when there's high humidity or air moving through humidity. So for example, wet bulb is when you take a wet washcloth in a room when you're warm in a warm room and you spin it around. The air moving across your face has moisture in it and it cools you down. That's wet bulb. Dry bulb is not using that. It's just the actual temperature. This is the last slide for this part. You'll go on to the next part to see more terminology.